Aljo and O'Malley. You know, guys, I mean, this in many ways is the unexpected fight of the summer. I didn't think these guys would be fighting this summer, did you? And by the way, Aljo getting put in the top spot, and this was a detail that Jon Anik had brought to us the Friday before Aljo's last fight. So weigh-ins were completed. We're in the process of, as Jon says, one more sleep. At that moment, in the 11th hour, Jon Anik, prepping for the show, came across a stat that he tweeted out to the world, which is Aljo being champion, being a multiple-time champion, or at least defending his belt, for his first time ever as a main event. I didn't know that. Might sound like a simple detail. Not a simple detail. I don't know that the sport has somebody more decorated than Valentina Shevchenko. She has never been a main event. Just to put in perspective, not to tease, to put in perspective for you. Like, it's not always about how good you are. There's something else that goes into that formula. So you have Aljo that's going to be his first main event, and he ends up taking on Cejudo. It's great. The back and forth at the end of it, it's real organic. It's on the East Coast. That night, Dana announces he's taking Aljo to Boston. Arguably Dana's most coveted event. Arguably. Certainly one of them. And this is the guy he's bringing. This is the guy he's bringing to headline. Dana White, so you understand how big Boston is to Dana. Dana White took Conor McGregor to Boston and put him fifth from the top. That's the kind of cards Dana takes to Boston, just so you understand. And he took Aljo. That tells me Aljo's a star. That's all I'm offering for you. It must be. I don't know how else to explain it. I don't know how else he would be taken in there. And I know O'Malley is. I know O'Malley's over. So, I think that's encouraging, and I think that's really exciting. Now, how do you beat Aljo? Because the first thing you have to do is you have to understand the psychology and the approach. And there has been nights where Aljo has gotten out of his lane. He's got him out of where he is comfortable, and the performance has paid. And the reason I tell you that is because if you're the opponent, in this case, Sean, and you are observing that, what is it that you're seeing? And one thing that Aljo will always do when he's at his best is make himself the victim. It was too short a notice. The company's against him. He's not being paid enough money. They kept him up too late. His hotel room's too small. I'm making things up now, but I'm intending to prove a point that's what he'll do, and he's already started it. I've got 2 arms and hurt, and I don't know if I'm going to do this. This guy's going to be the favorite. And, they want him to win. He's coming in to take my belt away, and that's what the quick turnaround is for, so I don't have a training camp. He's already started. He's not mad. He's not tripping. He's playing the game. So I'm just saying, once you see that, you establish it, how do you stop it? It'd be the first thing you have to do. The very first thing you have to do. Before you send him a pizza the night before and make him miss weight on the scale, right? I mean, there's all sorts of games that are being played. The first thing you have to do is take that ability away. But to do that, you got to make him the favorite. You got to make him the draw. You got to make him the A side. And that is counter and opposite to everything Sean O'Malley knows. If Sean O'Malley agrees with me, if he sees what I see, and he realizes he would have a strategic advantage to publicly putting Aljo over. He's the star. He's the best. He's number one. If he did that just to play a head game with Aljo, and believe me, it would. Aljo does not want that. If that got said, Aljo doesn't want it to the point that he will come out and he will argue against it. No, I'm not. I'm not that good. I'm not paid that much money. He doesn't want it. I mean, I'm really trying to stress that point for you. I don't know if Sean could do it. And that's not what he does. Sean's a star. Sean's the draw. Sean's the highest paid. Sean's the main eventer. Sean's the attraction. Sean's the one the crowd wants. I don't know if within Sean he could make that switch. And it's just interesting. It's a really interesting concept as these guys are playing the head game. These guys aren't on Twitter to sell you tickets. These guys aren't attacking each other on social media and making videos and coming at one another and getting their teammates involved in stealing jackets. They're not doing this to up pay-per-view sales. Some guys would. I'm telling you, they're not. That's not a game Aljo's ever played, and that's not a participation that Sean's current contract brings him in on. I'm just showing you that's not what's happening. They're doing this against each other. They're going after each other. They're trying to get over on each other. They're trying to mess with each other. Sean finds out Aljo doesn't want the date. That's the date they're going to do. Aljo tries to change the date. Sean's going, man, you already said that you don't want this date. Why would I give you this date? I'm not going to give you what you want. I'm going to give you what you don't want. We're going this day. I mean, they're playing this game with each other. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting. And you guys know, do you know Sean's coach, Tim? Because Tim and I are, and then there's something. I don't know what the word is. Tim and I are training partners. Tim and I are teammates. Tim and I are, it's something. It's something. Which makes Sean and I something. If Tim is now trained, do you see how this works? And Tim is a very interesting guy. Tim Welsh is his name. Tim used to live in Montana. And he had a Jeep. I'm trying to think it was a Wrangler or a Cherokee. I think it was a Jeep Cherokee. It's all dirty and brown. It was brown from the dust. I don't know what color this thing was. Man, he used to take this thing across country. Had 4 seats in it. He had 4 guys in it. Their stinky bags go in the back. And they drive up that interstate looking for people to train with. And he came through Portland a number of times. But Tim was different. He had a knowledge and an understanding of the sport where he was there to get workouts. He was there because he had his own dreams, and he's going to bring down St. Pierre, and he's going to be. He had these dreams, but it was one of these things where it was different. Like, I'm not sure that's what your calling is. He was good at it. He was really good at fighting. I'm not sure that's what his calling was. His philosophies, his understanding, his ability to teach. He could look at an athlete, and then he could decide the best way to deal with that athlete. And then he'd have a live round, and you could see it. He'd be implementing. He was sitting back and going, that was an interesting strategy. I don't usually see guys doing that in practice. Why did you elect to do that? We'd ask him these questions, and he was on a deeper level than the rest of us as far as his understanding, but he didn't see himself that way at that time. And now he does, and it's a really interesting spot. Tim, should Sean win, I believe, will be the youngest trainer of a world champion in our sport. And I think that distinction originally went to Faraz, but it went to Faraz 15 years ago. I believe if Tim gets Sean to the world championship, Tim will be the youngest trainer with a world champion in MMA. I don't know if it's the history of MMA, because Faraz was young. But it's a really interesting claim. It's a very interesting position. It's an interesting position for me. I mean, I was one of the guys who, behind Tim's back, we wanted him over there. He needed to be training guys. But it was a conversation you couldn't really have, because that could be misunderstood for your goals in this sport aren't going to work out. That was not true. He was really good at the sport. But I'd seen it before. Rest his soul. Robert Follis, one of the great coaches ever from MMA, right? I talk about Tim, one win away from having his first world champion. Robert had like 6. Robert had like 6 world champions in all sorts of different weight classes. Randy Couture, Dan Henderson, Evan Tanner. I mean, these are coming to mind. Matt Lindland, ranked number 1. Nate Quarry, a punch away from being a champion. Chris Lieben, not quite to championship, a big star status. Ed Herman, 18 years in the business. I'm missing them, man. They were all over the place. Robert's never had a match. Did you guys know that about him? Did you think I meant MMA? No, I meant what I said. He's never had a match. He never had a wrestling match. He never had a boxing match. I don't think he had a jiu-jitsu match. If he did, I would be surprised. He grew up in a religion where this wasn't allowed. Religion had a rule. Jehovah's Witness, so I was told they weren't allowed to sweat. So he couldn't go to practice. He couldn't go and do some of these things. He goes on and coaches 6 world champions. It was stunning. But I was in the room with Robert. He also wanted to be an athlete. He wanted to be a fighter, but he had a knowledge It was to the point that a group of guys had to sit him down one day and say, hey, you can get that world championship you're after, but in this capacity. And he did. He went and got 6 of them. So it's just an interesting spot. I'm proud of Tim. I'm telling the story because I'm proud of him. I'm proud of him, and I even if it was this much, if there's a grain of sand and a comment I made behind his back that maybe got into his ear somewhere, he's found himself in the right role. He's 1 win away. He's 1 win away from having a record. And in this sport, man, those are just hard to come by. He should be very excited. He should be very proud of that.